Hey Brian, how you doing today?
Very well, thank you.
I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. I just wanted to ask you a few questions as far as my coaching, my mentorship. I may ask you here just a little bit to kind of give us a little summary of your background, what you did before. I know you've got some sales experience under your belt already. Just kind of start there, Brian, and just kind of tell me what you used to do and then about when you met me, I guess.
All right. Well, when I got out of the Air Force, I went into sales. Was always kind of in sales even as a kid. I had a paper route, 12 years old, and had a lawn business, snow removal. So I've always out marketing myself. But when I got out of the Air Force, I went corporate. I worked for a company called Pitney Bowes, which is involved in the postal community, very familiar with shipping and mailing and all. And I was working my way up through national account manager there. Worked for a couple other large companies, a worldwide company, Oki Data, worldwide. After I got out of doing all that, I started doing some independent contractor stuff, primarily insurance. Worked for a couple marketing organizations. Took a little break from that when I moved where I live now in Charleston, South Carolina, from the Northeast. And that's when I met you. Yeah, because I have 2 years of being associated with you.
Cool, right on. So sales background, marketing background already. When you came on and you started selling for us, it was obviously there was some training involved, and it was kind of a different niche than what you're used to, probably, and kind of had to probably rewire your thought process in the way you sold things, I would think.
Yeah, a lot of similarities, and I think it's because it's system driven. You're teaching something that from point A to point B is always going to work if you just follow that system and follow that program that's already in place. But it was definitely different and takes some time to get good at it and hone your skills. Doesn't just happen overnight where you know everything. What we're trained on and what you gave us is probably 60 to 70% of what we need. And then it's just a matter of like on the job training, getting out there, doing it, getting your own experience, then coming back and having follow-up conversations with you just to get it all working together to get the synergy going and make a good cohesive move forward. And eventually you get there.
I appreciate that. And then I would guess, you mentioned systems and kind of putting things in perspective for everybody. I guess my coaching or my management role, my leadership role, I know I do things a little different than some of the other managers you've seen around us and outside of here. I've got other systems in place, like you mentioned Synergy too. I've got the Crew app where we kind of all can come together and post numbers and high five each other. And you're kind of plugged into a positive place, right? Just kind of keep you driven a little bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely positive. And like you said, yeah, the Crew app is good. You'll do even as time goes on, training sessions, an hour training session, which is great because you record them and you can make it sometimes. But if you can't make it, you can go back and watch it. So there's a whole library of those in place too, which is good because let's face it, some of them are more favorable to what I want to go back to a lot. I've watched a couple of them, numerous times because the information's in there. And so you don't always have to ask questions. You just listen to what was said by yourself, maybe even another member of the team. We kind of peel back the onion together and talk about what's working, what's not. But for the most part, you're going to have the final say on any of the training that goes on. But yeah, it's good. It's been very good.
Thank you. And I know we're pressed for time because you have a meeting coming up. So I'm going to just go ahead and drop right into the questions. So the first question, mindset transformation. Brian, can you describe how your mindset may have changed since we started working together?
I think from the philosophy of we're all independent contractors, it's an entrepreneurial job. But I think there's a really good teaching that you do as far as keeping us understanding why we're doing it, what's our why. We discuss books. The books we discuss are self-improvement in sales, business, and life. So it gives not just a picture of what we're doing here in sales, but maybe a more balanced lifestyle across the board. And we talk like that and we get pretty philosophical. So
Okay, good answer. And there's actually some work balance question here shortly too. Question two, sales skills improvement. How have your sales skills evolved through our coaching sessions? And are there any specific examples that you can maybe mention?
I mean, it's called sales, and it is sales because we're closing at the end, but this really is more of a teaching position. It's an education position where we're just sharing the information to our clients. And at the end, they don't feel pressured. They're going to thank us because we didn't get salesy on them. You know, we might lead them a certain way, but it's not manipulative at all. It's just a very educational story that we're giving them and trying to help them. And that's all we're really doing. And I think the best example, and it happens often, is they say thank you when you're done. And some of them say, hey, I have a referral. They want you to talk to them. You know, yesterday I had a meeting with a lady, a very sharp lady, who I met with the person that referred her 90 days ago. And she just called me out of the blue, and we hooked up, booked an appointment yesterday and met, and was really able to help her. And she just became a union steward. So she doesn't know where to go get the information. Prior to this, her background was with Hilton International, and she worked there for many years, and she was in HR. So, I mean, it was really good for her. She liked the education of it and everything, because she doesn't like people coming to her asking her questions when she doesn't know the answers and doesn't really know where to get them. I think it's just the fact that they're happy and thankful when we're done. That's really the example. But when you get that at the end, whether there's an enrollment or not, you know that you've done something right.
All right, number 3, overcoming challenges. What was the biggest challenge you faced before our coaching, and did our work together help you overcome that challenge?
I think the biggest challenge was more when I did this in the field versus virtual. You know,
Okay.
once I got to learning virtual, that was a challenge, and that was a technology challenge for me. So the biggest challenge was just being on your own out there, a lot of drive time, some overnights, and maybe going on a 3-day trip where you have 8-10 appointments and you only get to see maybe a third of them. That's frustrating. So I think the biggest challenge would be learning to overcome the frustration, and with the motto like we have of some will, some won't. That's the attitude we have to take. Even at times still now, it's the frustration of booking appointments and then them not showing, knowing that you have something valuable for them. That's the biggest frustration.
All right, very good. The next question is goal setting and achievement. How has the goal setting process we implemented impacted your ability to achieve your professional objectives?
I don't want to sound arrogant at all, or I've always done goals prior to this, so this is very similar to what I've done in the past, and it's a real joy to see it being practiced within a company versus doing it on your own when everybody's doing it, because then again, we're talking about synergy, and as people get better, become successful, the synergy kind of is shared by all. And that's an amazing thing to have with a company where we're all individuals around the country. We've never met as a group where we could hug each other or touch each other face to face. So to be able to develop synergy like that is pretty cool.
Right on, I agree with that. Client interactions. How has your approach to client interactions changed since we focused on enhancing your communication and relationship building skills?
It's a good question. I just think that if you give everybody the respect they deserve, you're going to get to a successful end. It's like I'll often say to them up front when we're talking about why we do what we do and how we start our call with reading a letter off. And it just comes down to if you're in your workstation in the morning, getting your mail together, you look to the right, you look to the left, and maybe ask a person in front of you the same question, you might get 2 or 3 different answers. And so I just think that's the biggest thing. We just got to be patient with our clients and answer their questions. And again, don't be a salesperson with them. This isn't a salesy kind of job. This is definitely consulting and more of an education than anything. And then if they ask questions, you don't want to do what they just heard from their coworkers. The biggest thing to do is say, I don't know. Let me go find out and let me get back to you. And that's just being respectful to another human being, because we don't want to give them answers that are wrong. This affects their decisions they make right there. It might affect at retirement. And we hear stories like that. And it's sad when someone was led astray and their pensions were a little bit shorter than what they thought they would be because they made an error or someone gave them information, they listened to them. I think the interfacing with us being third party is the most beneficial thing that we offer to our clients.
Okay, good. Confidence boost. Can you talk about a moment when your coaching significantly boosted your confidence in your abilities
I think it's just the relationship that you have with your mentors, with your managers or whatever. You've been there, done the same thing, that if I'm weak in an area, you can point it out and you can do it in a way that's not any way demeaning. I think it's just the fact that we can relate because you've done the same thing that I'm going through. And that's really good, because I've worked with some people where they've done the same thing and they don't have any idea how to communicate that across without being condescending and domineering. And nobody wants to hear that when they're down.
No, I do agree with that. And yeah, it's good to have a mentor, coach, manager, if they've been there, done that, and they're able to kind of help you through what they teach you. Their trials and tribulations, it's always helpful. But like you said, there may be some that don't know how to relay that
Right.
properly. All right, now here's the work-life balance. How has our coaching helped in managing your work-life balance and reduce stress in your daily routine?
The thing is, that's a practice, just like we were talking about earlier, that I've had in place in my life, in my career for years, and it goes back many, many years. And my wife and I used to have a small network marketing company. They had a really good weekend program one time about the pillars, your five balance pillars. So we've always kind of lived by that, and it's very important. I mean, you got to have priorities, and the top priority for us is God, and then family, but work comes in to be one of those pillars, and it's one of the more important, more significant pillars to have, because without a good income, you can't do a lot of the other things you're trying to accomplish through those other pillars.
That's right. That's right. Next question is continuous learning. How have you embraced the concept of continuous learning and self-improvement since you've been here?
Well, I think it's kind of a piggyback off what you should be doing as an entrepreneur to begin with. One of the things that they're going to shove down your brain is that you have to associate with other like-minded people, that you have to read books, that you have to constantly be looking for ways to improve yourself. And you do a meeting or whatever, you come out and you assess yourself. So, what'd you do right? What'd you do wrong? What you would do different? A lot of what I've done in the past is the same things that are ingrained into you with what we're doing here. But the beauty is you get lazy, you forget, you take shortcuts, you get away from it. And when you get away from it, that's when somebody usually taps you on the shoulder and say, hey, you're still doing this, that, and the other basic stuff. And we do that as a group. We have a team meeting and we hear it then too. So I think people that do this and take it serious are always looking for ways to improve themselves. And it seems like the group that you have and trained are all pretty similar in that regard. Again, back to that synergy that we're able to create. So
yeah, I agree with that. And a lot of people want to do that kind of stuff, but I think they don't have the right mindset for it, where a mentor or coach, somebody that they could work with and stay on them, almost micromanage sometimes, to help them stay motivated and help them looking down the road, not just right now, but down the road, for some goals, and try to achieve those goals. Without that guidance, a lot of people would fail out. They might be a good upline, somebody that's really managing their team. I was fortunate to where I came from before. I had a good mentor and I learned a lot. Plugged in and did what I was supposed to do, and then of course carried it over. And the key is, you mentioned it earlier, is continuously learning and growing as a person. Success stories. Can you share a success story or the strategies that we've discussed that you've learned gave a positive outcome to you and your clients?
Let's say I'm in with a client, virtual meeting with a client, and I have a question. I can continue my meeting, send a text, or put them on hold, tell them what I'm doing, and make a phone call to you. And 95+% of the time, you're going to pick up the call. The only way you wouldn't is if you're on a call, and then you would text back and say, hey, I'm in a meeting. Is it urgent? Can you just text me? So some questions can be answered with a simple text, but every now and then there's one that can't. And one of the things that I found challenging early on, and I don't do many of them, that's the other reason why I'm not good to practice, is when we enroll somebody into a program where they've already used up their allotment spaces, and we have to do a piggyback. That word kind of freaks me out a little bit when I think about doing it at it, because you're talking about people's monies that are being taken from their payroll, and they already have that box allotted to something else. And to add ours into it, if they want to do a program at cost, I don't want to mess up theirs, and I don't want to mess up ours. So, but again, the successes, whenever I've had to call on one of the situations, you were there, and even though I felt comfortable in doing it now. I still know that if I need to, there's a lifeline there to reach out and ask you. But yeah, that may not be very deep or whatever, but that's it for me.
That's good. Just, I mean, knowing you have a lifeline when it's needed. That's good. Last question, Brian. Future aspirations, looking down the road, looking ahead, how do you plan to continue leveraging the skills you've learned and mindset shifts that we've worked through to further your career and personal growth?
Well, if you look at me, my career is kind of coming to an end here. So, I mean, I don't have what the luxury of what some of my teammates do as far as time and years. For me, I love that I still have something to do and can be successful at it and serve a purpose. I can't retire and just sit and do nothing. I'm always going to have a job of some sorts. The beauty of this is I don't have to stop, especially now that I do these presentations virtually versus the grind as an older man would be the driving and the overnight hotel stays and all that goes with it. It's more dangerous. This allows me to further my career. I can go on as long as I want to, as long as you'll have me.
Well, I appreciate that too. And I bet your wife appreciates you being able to stay home more too.
She does. She does. Even though I don't get to see her much anyway, she's a nurse. She's still working. She's like me. And we're both at retirement age. And we talked about at the beginning of the year and we looked at each other and said, I don't really want to quit working. She goes, well, I don't want to quit working either. So we're okay, well, let's work. So that's what we're doing.
No, and that's true. When you said safer, I mean, that's true too, because a lot of times all that windshield time, you're on these major highways and interstates, there's always accidents, tractor trailers running over people. And I'm sure that part, her not having to worry, she knows you're home. She knows you're all right.
Right. And she's, even though she's never been in the business, she kind of understands enough about what I'm doing. And she gave me one of the nicest compliments I think I get for this. And she goes, you're not really selling. You're like a teacher. I'm like, well, that's good. Thank you. I'm glad you shared that with me because that's what I'm trying to do, And then from the other point, she does have a little bit of kick in the butt if you need it. I was saying to her, it was one weekend, this is a while back, but I said, I really need to take like an hour and a half right now and set some appointments. I got to go make some calls. I'm really short on appointments. And so, she heard that, didn't say a word. And all of a sudden I'm sitting there and she pulls the vacuum out and she says, all right, you either got a vacuum or you need to go set some appointments. So she kind of motivated me. And I think she meant it. I don't think she was joking. So I went and set some appointments.
That's great. That's great. I'll have to remember that next time when we have our meeting, I'm gonna have a vacuum for a problem.
Yeah, if you hear in the background, yeah.
All right, man. Well, I know you're watching that appointment. I do appreciate your time. Popping on here with me. So I do appreciate it and the feedback.
Yep. No, you're a good manager, good coach. Like I said, you always there when we need us, and always will get an answer to us eventually if it takes a little while. But you never run and hide.
That's right. I can't. What does my wife says? You can run, but you can't hide.
That's right. I think there's a song or two about that. Yeah.